Um, it's going to be a different one today. It's going to be a little bit Twilight Zone for some of you, but it should be enlightening. And it should also be fairly practical as well. So I'm going to discuss kind of bending reality to your creative favor, right? Or artistic favor. In other words, bending reality in a way that transforms your current circumstances to help you reach your artistic goals. I mean, you could use this for anything, but as artists, this might be something that can be enlightening for you guys. And it doesn't matter if you think it's true or not. It doesn't matter if you think it works or not. You never know until you try it. But what I always find is that it's more about what is useful instead of what is absolutely true. And I've got enough evidence in my own experience to feel like this stuff is more true than not. So perhaps I'm not bending reality, but more sharing the way that I see reality. So what I'm doing right now is just waiting for a few of you guys to show up, making sure you guys can hear me and all that type of stuff. I wouldn't be surprised if the screen locks up or something like that. So if that happens, whatever. But I'm going to kind of hold the idea that everything's going to go just fine. And accept if it doesn't, right? I'm just finding myself on my phone here. How narcissistic is that? I'm watching myself broadcast on the phone. No, I'm just trying to make sure that it's actually working. Here we go. Wayne, good to see you. Welcome. All right, let's take a look here. All right. I only need the, I don't care if I'm only talking to one person. This is going to connect with someone. And for some people, this will just be too weird. And this is a really great way to polarize people about me, which is great, because that way, I work with more rock stars, I work with more people who vibe completely with me and that I vibe completely with. So this is going to be a fun conversation. Feel free to ask questions as we go through this. This is not rehearsed at all. I'm just going to share some of my belief systems and then try to share ways that this can become practical for your artistic life. All right. So if you're there, if I got your attention, great. Here we go in bending reality. All right. So the first thing that I want to get to is the idea of my perception of reality and our perception of reality. Essentially, here's the way I look at things, is that there really isn't any, time is an illusion, all right? So I believe that there's every combination that there possibly could be for who you are, who you could become, every action that you could possibly take already exists. That's kind of what the universe is. It's a place of possibility. So it's kind of like, think of it like an Xbox game or something like that, right? Or a PlayStation, whatever. And you could play this game 100, 1,000 times, and it's going to be different every single time. And it's going to, you're still going to have control through the game of what you do, whether you move up, down, right, left, whether you use a sword or a different sort of tool or whatever. All those options are already on the Blu-ray disc or whatever kind of discs they use. I'm assuming it's some sort of Blu-ray sort of thing, right? So when you're playing the game, you're not going through chromatic time at all. There is no time on the disc. All you're doing is jumping from one part of the disc to another, from one part of code to another, to another. Does that make sense? Or am I completely losing you guys so far? This would be helpful if you guys do interact, because then I could kind of respond to your questions. I don't know how far I can take you guys. It's almost kind of like you have to accept this as a possibility before you can jump to the next possibility, if that makes sense. So Yeah. Anyway, I've got 5 of you on here. So if you guys are just joining, welcome. We are talking about, as an artist, how we can bend reality. Okay. TJ, good to hear from you. Thank you. So essentially, the universe is basically just a giant, in my opinion, a giant expanding PlayStation game, right? And our lives are every option that we possibly could ever have, anything in nature could ever have, is already built into the software, is already built into the disk. So as far as time goes, every moment is a different reality, is a different reality, is a different reality. We're not going through time, through one reality. What we're doing is through our intention, we are jumping to different parts of the disk. And every part of that disk is like a new universe, a whole different reality, if you will, a whole parallel universe, if you will, right? I could turn my chair this way, but there's another universe where I turned my chair this way at the same time. Does that make sense? And those are two completely different realities, right? Which go off in different directions. So for example, what I'm saying right now has already existed. This is nothing new. I'm just focusing my consciousness on doing something that already exists. Does that make sense? In other words, you can't do something that doesn't already exist. That makes sense? Nothing can happen in the universe that doesn't already exist, right? In one reality, Bernie Sanders won the presidency. In another reality, Hillary Clinton won. And in our current reality right now, Donald Trump is the president, right? So different sorts of realities all exist. So every option exists, all right? So this is really interesting to think about, because this conversation we're having now probably exists in a million different ways, right? There might be a version of me that doesn't say that is a perfect speaker, that has perfected this sort of speech or whatever the hell I'm doing. And I may veer off, and I may be better explaining this in another reality than I am with this one. And depending on how you are reacting to this reality, depending on how you are reacting, is which version of my conversation with you you're hearing. That makes sense? Hold on just a second. I'm going to shut the door real quick. Hopefully my cat doesn't freak out. So, with this said, this means that you have access through your consciousness to experience what seems to be the impossible. Because the universe that we're in right now, the reality we're in right now, is just centimeters away from the impossible. There's no distance between one reality or the next. It's not like the most acceptable next reality is closer than the most outlandish. Does that make sense? The only difference is the way that you're vibrating, the way your consciousness is vibrating in what kind of reality it opens up to you. So the more you become aware of what reality is, and the more that you step away from the dogma, kind of the collective consciousness that everyone seems to fall into if they don't control their own lives. That reality that we consider normal is no further away than the reality that we consider unreachable. Does that make sense? And it looks like I'm slowing down for a second, but I want to continue this, and hopefully the camera will catch up. Hold tight, I got to let the cat out. Why not? Go on. And now the cat will probably want to come back in, but whatever. Are you guys following me so far? It'd be really great if I can, get a comment from you if you guys are following what's happening here. All right. Oops. See, I'm listening to myself from a different reality in the past. Isn't that interesting? So yeah, the way that I look at things is that every moment is a reality. I'm not moving my hand from here to here. Every nanosecond of that is actually a different reality that brings us from here to here. But because of our belief system, we believe that we can only go from here to here if it's a fluid motion. So in other words, our consciousness moves from one space to the next in what we believe is possible, right? And the higher our awareness and consciousness, the more outlandish things we believe can become possible. That makes sense so far? Let's see what we got here. I think you're saying maximize how you live life. Can't do it all, but you have to find a reality we want to choose. Well, this is the whole thing is I believe the reason that we're here is to experience something, and that's something that we want to experience. Anything that we can imagine, and this is my belief, anything that we can imagine exists somewhere, right? That version of me at 20 that wanted to be a rock star, well, that happened. That exists somewhere, right? But at some point, my consciousness steered me in a different direction, right? My belief just wasn't quite there. I was so desperate to be something that I chose the lack of that, right? By acknowledging how badly I wanted something, I was more acknowledging my lack of it. And thus, that's kind of what my reality gave me, right? Whereas if I normalize the idea of just being, this larger than life character that I was hoping to become in my 20s, then I probably would have a completely different reality than I'm experiencing. See, the experience exists, but my consciousness is experiencing this particular choice. So I think that's what life is maneuvering through making conscious and unconscious choices. And I'm going to loop this into being an artist in your current circumstances and all the excuses that people use to tell themselves that they can't do something or be what they want to be, right? They can use so many excuses. They can use, I don't have enough time, I've got a family, I don't have enough money, I don't have a lot of things. And trust me, I've used all of these myself, and I still do use them, right? I'm not perfect. I'm just becoming more and more aware that I have a choice, right? In one version of this conversation, right, I have 100 people that have joined me for this conversation, and everyone is commenting and interacting, and all this stuff is going on. That because I can think it, that exists somewhere. I'm just not experiencing that reality because of where my own consciousness is. And every one of you is experiencing this differently as well. I get the version of you that I believe reflects my own idea of who you guys are, probably. Whereas you're getting a reflection of who you think I am. And through that, you may be getting a different reality than I am, right? So how much deeper into the rabbit hole do we want to go? So if this is the case, right, this is where we can make things practical. If this is the case, if reality is something that you can choose, then really the goal is to not look at what's happening right now. This is your past manifest. That's all it is. This isn't your now manifest. What you're thinking consciously now is going to manifest later. But unfortunately, most of us predetermine what our future is going to be by viewing where we're at right now. So that's why for many of us, life doesn't change, because all we do is re-acknowledge the present moment, which was caused by our previous belief system. And then we see it, and then we acknowledge that to be a reality that's not changeable. And thus we get the next reality that is so similar to the last one. So that is kind of being unconscious, really. If we think consciously, then what we can choose is a future that we want, and stay focused on that and make a connection consciously between where we are now and the future self that we want to experience, right? And the future self is already here, so it's already now, right? So we're just moving in a believable way to the next now, which is what we perceive as our future. But all of it exists right now. So with that said, what we can do, and what I recommend some of you do, especially if you feel powerless with your circumstances, or you feel like, well, I'm not talented enough, or I'm not, I don't have the opportunities that everyone else has. I don't have the connections that everyone has. I don't have the ideas that everyone has, right? It's just current reality. There's a version of you that does have the ideas and does have the friends and does have the opportunities and is doing the things that you want to do. You know, there's a version of you that put out a hit record or a hit track or whatever. There's a version of you that has hit the peak, right? There's probably also a version of you that hit the peak and then died of a drug overdose, right? There's every kind of version of you. So you got to kind of be careful what you wish for. But you want to pick the future you that is ideal and understand that exists. And all you have to do is raise your consciousness to get in connection with that. And then what you do is you take your, you allow that version of you to make your decisions for you, right? Your current version self will say, oh, I don't feel like doing that, or I don't think I can do that, or I don't think that's possible for me. Which is just because that's the evidence that you have right now. But if you disregard evidence and just allow that future version of you to install themselves into you and start making those decisions, then you can streamline a process of getting from point A to point Z, right? Those songs that you've been wanting to make, all those unfinished songs, there's a reality where they're already finished. They're already done. So the way is there. The way is already, it's already there. So when you say, I'm never going to get these done, that's just your current reality, that you can do that. But there's a version of you that's already done it. Does that make sense? There's a version of you that, you know, if you're working 40, 50 hours a week, plus you have family and you have all these other responsibilities, there's still a version of you that was able to accomplish quite a bit with all that. There's also a version of you that has much less stress, that makes more money and works less and has more time for creative things. So you can choose that for yourself and make that possible for yourself. Does that make sense? Or am I just talking way beyond what you think and I'm just talking a bunch of shit? I'm sure loads of you logged on and went, oh, this guy's fucking nuts, and took off. That's a fantastic filter. It's great for me because I work better with open-minded people. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to agree with everything I say, but having an open mind can raise your own possibilities in so many ways. You know, all I'm suggesting is, you know, try this on like a jacket and see if it fits. And if it doesn't fit, you throw it out. But if it's useful, right? For example, this is fact that, you know, sports stars, right? Some of the best people in sports, they rehearse the version of themselves that's always making the winning shots, right? They rehearse the version of themselves that are always winning. They rehearse that over and over in their head. And whether they think about it the same way as I do, they're rehearsing and getting in touch with a different version of themselves. So their reality shifts to become that person, right? For some reason, I don't know if I locked up or whatever, so I'm just seeing if I'm still live here. Looks like I'm still live, so cool. But I don't know if I've locked up or something like that. Whatever, doesn't matter. As long as you guys can still hear me. Can you still hear me? Yeah, TJ, you're right. It's visualization. And that's, when I was first introduced to visualization, I was thinking, okay, so what you're saying is we should just make shit up in our heads, and somehow that's going to change your life. Well, from my point of view, at that time, I believed in one solid, consistent reality that is non-changing and non-malleable, non-flexible, right? But when I came to a greater understanding, all of a sudden these words meant a lot more. Visualization actually means a lot more, because your imagination is reality as well. Your imagination is you just connecting to something that already exists. How can you imagine something that doesn't exist? Think about that. In reality, how does your brain, which has evolved from this universe, create something that has not already been created? If you think about it, it doesn't even make sense. So, yeah. So I use this to bend my own reality, you know? And by doing this, you don't have to, here's the thing. life can be a real grind if you believe that you have to bring your current reality to another reality on this one path. Like there's only one reality, right? But if you believe that you can bounce between realities, which is what I believe happens, then it's much more easy for you to believe that you can jump over to a version of yourself that is already doing what you want and start moving your reality into that. And what I think will happen is, first, you will elevate yourself by believing a bit more in yourself and believing that you can shift your reality. And then what will probably happen is the repercussions and the waves and the echoes of all the thoughts that you've thought before will come in front of you, and you will start thinking, oh, well, this isn't real. This is a load of shit because look, my reality sucks right now, or whatever it is. My reality is just the same. But all that's happening is that your past has caught up to you. That doesn't mean that what you're thinking right now is not going to become your future. It's just that you have to think your way consistently past your old thinking, right? So everything is a matter of perception. Well, yeah, everything is kind of if you look at it this way, everyone's reality is actually their own. Everyone's reality is different. So if that's the case, then we are all delusional in our own way, right? Our delusion creates our own reality, and the reality that we get back is the one that just kind of reflects back to us, right? We're constantly having a reality that reflects our belief systems, our expectations. So I'm getting a reality of all you guys, all dependent on my own expectations, right? Maybe there's a reality where every one of you that's on here is a huge fan of my work, and you've all joined my courses, or you've all invested yourself into what I'm doing. You know, there might be a version of you out there. And if I were to get to another version of myself that could accept that sort of reality of more and more people, a greater number of people positively reacting to what I have to say, or perhaps a better version of myself that communicates better about what my true message is, then I would be experiencing a different reality of you guys. So, and you would be experiencing a different reality of me as well, depending on your own expectations. So my belief system is we're all, there's not one reality. There's, for humans, there's, almost 10 billion different realities that all interlink with each other in one way or another, right? But at the end of the day, your reality is a reflection of your own beliefs and some sort of massive dogma. If you are living less consciously on certain parts of your life, and we all are on certain levels. So if you want to use this as an artist, then what I suggest you do is find your future self. But here's kind of a cool trick, right? Because a lot of people have a problem with the idea of putting something in their future because they don't really believe that they can move to that future. Their brain doesn't really, it just seems like something that hasn't happened yet, right? And the more you acknowledge that something hasn't happened, the further away you push that reality. So a better approach is to take your future self, all right, your best future self, and put it in your past, right? Place that future version of yourself in the past and imagine that you've already experienced it. Instead of it being in front of you, it's already behind you, and you're just wanting to re-experience that again and bring that into your current reality. For some people, that's a lot easier to do. So that's my big share for you guys. I hope that you guys are able to take this little Twilight Zone episode and use it to your favor. And if you enjoyed this, I may talk more about some of my beliefs and some of my reality experiments and so forth. But for now, have a fantastic Friday, and I'll talk to you guys real soon. Take care.